Hi guys, long time no see in this COVID infected world, but welcome to another KamicarzCreation video. Back in the workshop, not a lot been happening. I've done a few things on the old UC. I'm still having a few issues with the manifold, mostly my technique and products I'm using. So I've got that back off again at the moment, and I'll have it back on again soon. It's getting pretty quick and easy to do that job. But through the process, I had a few concerns about the bottom end of that motor. I don't have those anymore. I think the motor's pretty good and strong. But I started the process of building another 202, bigger, better, stronger, as I've said to a few people that have asked that question. And this block here is the engine that originally came in the car. It's not the original engine from the car. It's the 202 that was in it when I bought it, and they gave me the original 173, which I've rebuilt and put the blower on. Now this engine, I'm building it up as a spare, but I also have an LH Tirana out the side that's in very early stages of restoration, might I say, and we might have a bit of a look at that over the coming months as I start to progress down that track. But this 202, I thought, with the knowledge that I've gained by building the 173, all of the feedback I've had through doing these videos, and I noticed that the Holden 6 202 engine build is one of my most viewed videos. It's 2,500–3,000 views on that video alone, just building a Holden 6, and they are a great motor. So I'm going to do another series on this engine build, and this will be a much more intricate build with this 202, and I'll walk you through a few of the things I'm doing now in the block preparation, and we'll just have a look at some of the parts. So let's have a look. So this block is a standard 3.3 litre 202 red motor block. All that's been done to it at this stage is stripped down and acid washed and ready for a few changes. Now I've also bought, which I haven't got with me at the moment, I've also bought a set of Ross Racing pistons. This is a kit from the Spool Imports website. So Ross Racing pistons with H-beam rods, and they're all pretty swanky pistons, all shot peened and balanced weights, and the rods got ARP studs already put in them. Pretty nice looking stuff, nice and strong. And to go with that, one of the things I thought I'd do is get the Sonic Injection Crank Girdle. Unproven to me, I haven't had a lot to do with them, haven't talked to a lot of people about them, but coming from the engineering background that I have, it has to be a good thing, tying together all of the main journals, strengthening all those up, ties all the block together to make it much more rigid, I'm suspecting. And this engine will have a fair bit of horsepower pushing through it. Don't know at this stage what, and I don't know that as long as the 173 goes well in the UC with the supercharger on it, I reckon this engine will be a turbocharged engine, something I haven't done, and I want to experience that, especially I'm seeing a lot of them out there. So going to run the crank girdle on there. The big thing with running these crank girdles is got to do a little bit of modification to get the sump back on there. And one of the first things I noticed, I've had it just sitting on there at the moment, is the oil pickup that sits in here and bolts down into this hole. Is going to need a little bit of adjustment up or down. To get it in around that girdle. So it's one of the first things I'm noticing. I've also bought a set of Arp Main Studs. Now these came through Sonic Injection website again with the crank girdle. So going to fit those up. They come with a spacer that sits, and you can see over here, spacer sits on top of the cap, and these studs aren't screwed in very far, and then the girdle will sit on top of those spacers. In the original build of the 173, I ended up with a spare set of Welsh plugs, which is a good thing. I didn't think I'd be using them this soon. And one of the mistakes I made on that 173 is when I had it acid washed, got it back, it was all machined, everything was machined, and I did the assembly. Novice mistake was the Welsh plugs were still in there and I didn't change them, and when I got the engine in and running dry without any coolant in it, thought yeehaw, filled it up with coolant, and it was like a fountain out the Welsh plugs. So won't make that mistake this time. Those plugs will be coming out soon, and I've got the new ones ready to go in. So that's the process. Just going to start fitting these studs up and getting the girdle sitting on there at this stage, so I can work out where I need to make some adjustments to put the sump back on. So visually, this girdle is a nice bit of gear with those Arp Main Studs. They come with a hardened washer underneath here, which is black and anodized, and the nut, and down under the girdle you can see that the spacers sit on top of the main cap to give it all level. And on my initial fitment of the sump, I do have a few clearance issues, which I'm sure a few people have had when they've used these. It'd be interesting to get some feedback of people that have done this process before me. I'm just filming it for those that follow me, and I'll get this sump and just sit it on at the moment and show you the issues that I have. So as far as the rear goes, it's not a problem, and obviously we've got a lot higher area here where the oil sits in the well. The issue comes where we get a bit thinner distance here, and you can see it rocks a bit, so she's touching up here somewhere probably initially, but that's as low as I can get it down on the other end. So we got, probably looking at nearly 3/8, quarter to 3/8 of a gap there. So we've got a little bit of adjustment, and it could have to come out of the sump, but what I'm going to do is take it all apart again and check the depth of the holes in the block, the threaded holes that take the studs, and check that they're all even and that the studs are all bottoming out, and make a few thought processes from there. So with the girdle and everything off and the studs just in, it's pretty obviously the length of the stud that it's sitting on the underside of the sump. Now I have got enough room if this goes into the Tirana. I just checked under mine with the engine in it now, and I've got plenty of room. I could modify this sump, but I'm going to look at a couple of other alternatives before I do that. Namely, the threaded hole in the block is about 30mm deep, and the studs are going down into those beautifully, but there is no countersinking on the cap surface at all, so I'm going to ask the question of whether I could actually counter bore these, because the thread length on the stud is nowhere near 30mm, whether I could counter bore the ones that are interfering and screw those studs down. They only need about 5mm to get the clearance on the sump. So I'm just doing a comparison on the original main bolt to the ARP stud that's been supplied. And even though I've checked the holes on the depth of the hole in the block is 30 mil, the bolt only protrudes out about 20 mil. Now I've got, when I mount these in, I've got about 5 mil, maybe 6 mil sitting out the top of the nut when I screw the nut on, which don't really need, it's not doing anything, and that is what I need to reduce to use the standard sump without modifying the sump. I definitely don't want to screw the studs down to the point where they're bearing on the bottom of the threaded hole. That's definitely not good. So the options of either counter boring the hole, the other option is machining the ARP stud, extending that thread, or even putting a relief in and bring it up so the thread will go down further, will give me a solution. Not that I really want to do that with these because you know, they're designed to be a certain strength for the size they are, even though they're at the weakest point at the bottom of that thread, so it shouldn't really reduce the strength of the stud by relieving that end so they screw down to the block a bit more. So yeah, a few options there. It'd be interesting to get some feedback off some people on what they've done. Again, I don't want to take the top of the stud off because it has the Allen key tightening locator in it. I've just got to bring those studs down probably 5 or 6 mil, the top of the stud down about 5 or 6 mil, and I think I'd be good with fitting that sump on. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment, getting this crank girdle set up and mounted on. Once I get it clearing the sump, I've then also got to check the clearance on the actual crank, which is away being balanced at the moment. So anyway guys, that'll do for now. And we'll move forward in the next video. I'm going to do a whole series on this engine build with the parts that I bought, give people a bit of an idea, let some people out there with a lot of knowledge have their comments and educate me as well. But this is going to be a good build. It's going to be a really good, strong bottom end.